Welcome back to the show. My name is Matthew Lucci, and this is The Truth. Thank you once again for joining us on the American Liberty Media Network. You can check out all of our episodes on our YouTube channel, as well as AmericanLibertyMedia.com. We have a great episode ahead for you. I really wanted to talk about education policy in this country, and we will still have an episode on education policy. We'll bring in some more experts in a future episode. We do have a school board candidate coming on today. We're going to hear from her later. Her name is Nova OLSON. She's running for school board in Godley ISD in the great state of Texas. They've had some issues lately, and we will get to that when we get a little bit later in the show, as always when we bring the guests on. But we also have some very important things happening in the world that we do need to talk about. Over the weekend, Iran attacked Israel with over 170 drones and 150 missiles. This is the first time ever that Iran has directly attacked Israel, not using any proxies, just missiles coming out of Iran and toward Israel. And so the entire nation and the entire world has been in an uproar since then. We need to be talking about that. I actually wrote a piece for ALM News, and you can find that on AmericanLibertyMedia.com, that I wanted to share with you. I put this out on Sunday. Really short read, but I'll go through it here. It's called Attack on Israel Displays Iran's Military Incompetence. Again, the attack on Israel displays Iran's military incompetence. Let's get into it. Iran's attack on Israel over the weekend displayed nothing less than Iran's strategic and military incompetence. They have tipped their empty hand and have shown the world that they have little military might. The United States should never again cede to their demands, nor should we allow their bully tactics to dictate our foreign policy in the Middle East. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. On Saturday, Iran escalated the conflict in the region with a large-scale drone attack against Israel. The drone assault was supplemented by ballistic and cruise missiles. According to early reports, Iran launched at least 170 drones and 150 missiles toward Israel. The Israeli missile defense system intercepted the vast majority of incoming missiles, and most of Iran's bomb-carrying drones were shot down before they even left Iranian airspace. Over the course of the 4-hour-long assault, the Iron Dome air defense system intercepted over 99% of the incoming weapons. Some ordnance did manage to land in Israel, causing minimal damage with few casualties. The attack came in the wake of a missile strike on Iran's embassy in Syria that has been attributed to Israel. The strike killed several Iranians, including 2 of the country's top generals. Now, this is the first time that Iran has launched a direct military assault on the nation of Israel, giving the world its first glimpse of Iran's true military power. While the dust is still settling, one thing is clear. Iran's military capabilities have certainly been overstated. For decades, the United States has caved to pressure from Iran and its allies to lift sanctions against the country. President Obama sent hundreds of millions of dollars to Iran to appease their government, while unfreezing $150 billion in Iranian assets. President Biden followed with another $6 billion. This undoubtedly emboldened the Iranians, who have grown used to weak U.S. presidents just handing them whatever they want. Moving forward, the world should recognize that Iran extended a significant portion of its available weaponry with little effect. What's not in the article is that Iran has, before this attack, around 3,000 missiles. This attack used up roughly 5% of those. It's a significant portion. Very costly to Iran, not very easy to replace that. But if they can do very little damage with 5% of their overall arsenal, if they have, from what I've seen, one confirmed casualty, a little girl who was injured, a little Bedouin girl in the Negev desert in southern Israel, if they have one casualty with 5% of their arsenal, that's 1/20th of their arsenal. If they throw the whole arsenal at Israel, leaving nothing left to defend themselves with, nothing left to posture with, we're talking about probably only a couple of dozen casualties at the current rate. And that's why I wrote this article, and I say they will certainly attempt to spin this as a show of strength and try to gain the upper hand in regional negotiations. The United States should not bow to their demands in those future negotiations. We have seen the worst that they can do to our allies, and we know that our allies in the region will be able to contain their aggression. Iran's threats should be taken seriously, but their military capabilities should be considered for what they are: weak and easily countered. The next administration should act accordingly, keeping an America First agenda that does not bow down to the will of a feeble and vindictive Iran. They've opened the can of worms for themselves. Israel was easily able to intercept 99% of all the incoming weaponry. What that tells me, and what it should tell the rest of the world, is that Iran can talk a big game. They can step up and say, we are developing nuclear weapons. They can step up and say, we have all these ballistic missiles. But they are strategically and militarily incompetent. And I don't know for sure if they've always been militarily incompetent, or if this missile strike on their embassy in Syria that took out 2 of their top generals contributed to that. They've lost a good portion of their chain of command. But Iran clearly does not know what they're doing. And moving forward, we need to make sure that the United States and the rest of the world does not give Iran what they want. They talk a big game. They try to bully people around, but they cannot deliver. That's why we need to make sure that our America First foreign policy holds, and we don't give Iran what they want. Only time will tell what comes next in the Middle Eastern saga. I know that Israel is planning a retaliatory attack. They've announced that. We'll have to wait and see, and we'll keep you updated both here on this show, but also on AmericanLibertyMedia.com, where you can check out ALM news. Okay. That out of the way, I did want to briefly touch upon another article that came out last year when Godley ISD made an attempt to push an $889 million bond. And this is for a school district that has only 2,600 kids, only 2,600 kids. And they're trying to put up a bond that would have been worth $889 million. That got defeated last year. But it's helpful to have some of this background because a new bond is coming up, and I want to talk to Nova about that here in just a second. But this comes from Texas Scorecard. Aaron Anderson is the author of this article that came out about a year ago. A small North Texas school district is accusing people of, quote, spreading misinformation about a bond proposition on the May 6th ballot, while hiding the bond's true cost to taxpayers. Godley Independent School District is asking voters to approve $889 million in new bond debt. All of the borrowed money would have to be repaid with property taxes. So obviously they would have to increase property taxes. We all know how this works. With interest, though, that bond package would have cost local property taxpayers $1.79 billion, more than double the amount that the voters saw on the ballot. The true amount of the proposed tax burden is also missing from the school district's bond marketing materials that were produced and distributed, of course, at taxpayers' expense. Details about the real cost of the bond are in a voter information document that local governments are required to publish. They're required to publish them. They're not always easy to find, not always easy to navigate. And that's why, unfortunately, it's up to those who are in opposition to the bond to really do a lot of that education. We've got bonds going off all over the place across Texas. And in fact, the document was buried in the elections section of the district's main website, hidden on page 15 of an embedded document titled Notice and Order of Election. This was very, very hard to find. The document also showed that Godley ISD currently owes $373 million in outstanding debt principal and interest. The proposed bond would add almost 5 times that amount to local property owners' tax burden. Yet when the citizens raised concerns about the district's spending plans and their impact on local taxpayers who are already struggling to make ends meet, school officials spent even more taxpayer money to complain about that pushback. In fact, Superintendent Rich Deere sent a letter to district residents on Godley ISD Bond 2023 letterhead, claiming to provide, quote, the facts about the bond. The letter accuses, quote, people from outside our community of handing out yellow cards and spreading misinformation. In fact, yellow cards referenced by Deere, which are door hangers that are being distributed in the district, clearly showed that they were created by the campaigns of Nova Olson, who's going to be on in a minute, and Kayla Lane, 2 candidates for Godley ISD School Board in last May's election. The door hangers accurately state that the $889 million bond will, quote, increase GISD debt exponentially, and note that, quote, our students are performing dismally. According to the latest performance reports from the Texas Education Agency, less than half of Godley's students read at grade level, and only a third perform at grade level in math. This goes on to say that across Texas, more than 100 school districts are asking voters to approve a total of $25 billion in property taxes, in property tax bond debt, and face no organized opposition from taxpayers in most of those cases. Unfortunately, what happens in a lot of school districts across Texas and across the country is they have projects that they want to expand. And we can't just come out and say we're against expansion, because things are growing. But if you look at a school district with 2,600 to 2,800 kids, and you say, look, we're going to need close to $900 million in order to fund these projects, that's insane. Especially if you look at the final cost, not the sticker cost, the final cost that's going to have to be paid back by the taxpayers through property taxes. And that comes out to $1.7 billion in that case. Now, that bond got defeated. Thank goodness. However, there's another bond coming up in the same school district this time around. In fact, in the local area, Joshua ISD and Granbury ISD also had big bonds fail last year that they're repackaging and putting back up this year. And they're going to keep trying to take our money for their projects. And they're going to keep trying until they get it through. And then at that point, we have no recourse. So get out, make sure that you're voting. That election is actually coming up here in May, at the beginning of the month. Let me get that date for you right now. That would be May the 4th. Make sure to go out and vote on May the 4th. If you're in the great state of Texas, you might have a bond on your ballot. Make sure to have your voice heard, because they're asking to spend millions or billions of our dollars to pull money out of our paychecks, to pull money out of our homes to pay for their projects. And if you don't approve, go out there and tell them that. If you do approve, go out there and tell them that as well. With that said, I really want to talk to our next guest, so let's get started. Nova, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate having you on. For those who are unfamiliar with you and what you're running for, talk to us a little bit about you, what you're running for, and why you decided to join the slugfest of running for a school board election here in 2024.
Well, I'm Nova Olson, and I'm running for Godley ISD School Board Trustee Place 1. And this is my second round running for school board position. I ran last year, had a really good run at it for a first time candidate, and didn't quite get across the finish line. But I decided that these issues were important enough that I wasn't going to give up trying to put myself in a position, to be a leader in this community. Especially important is, representing the both parents and teachers, but also taxpayers who may not have children in this district any longer or have moved here and don't have kids. We have a responsibility to manage our money wisely when it's someone else's money, and that's what school boards are supposed to do. That's what schools do. They use money that is not theirs. That's our money. So we have a huge responsibility to manage that appropriately. Other things that are really important, I think, teachers in this country have all over the place have been maybe not properly compensated, appreciated. And I think that goes into budgetary. If we manage things appropriately, we can reward those teachers who are doing a great job and tell them, not just in word, but tell them with our pocketbooks, man, you really make a difference and we appreciate you. Also transparency. I began to see that Godly ISD has trouble with transparency, and that goes with the policies that they've put into place, especially the policy that does not open public comment to deal with issues that the community thinks are maybe important, but only those which are on the agenda. And it further lacks transparency because the community does not have any access to the board book. So agenda items may be of importance, but we would never know as a community because those documents aren't made available, so we know what will be discussed. So maybe we could be informed. So that's what I hope to bring to the table is some changes in this community that will help us be successful, both, that so we don't tax people out of their homes, that we provide an excellent education for kids so that they're prepared to go into the world after high school, meaning core academics. That should be first. That's our educational responsibility is core academics so that kids leave educated. So those are in a nutshell the things that I'm passionate about and why I got involved in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. All great things to be fighting for. There's one of the things that you talked about there that I wanted to expand upon a little bit more, and that is that transparency piece. Um, we've talked before, and I know a handful of folks who live within Godly ISD who have been trespassed and not allowed back into the Godly ISD school board meetings because they were asking questions in those public comment periods. Are those rumors? Do those things happen? How do we fix them if they do?
Oh, they absolutely happen. I have been the recipient of not just one letter, but more than one letter from the district warning me. They call it a formal warning. And for things so terrible as refusing to shake the hand of a school board trustee, a gentleman in a position of power, and I dared to question why budget documents were not available to the public at a budget meeting. So I personally have been the recipient of that kind of trampling on our First Amendment rights. You know, we have the right to petition our government for redress of grievances. And if we can't speak to those that we have elected, then there is definitely a lack of transparency.
You are 100% right about that. How large is the Godley ISD School Board? And by extension, how many good folks on the school board would it take in order to actually change that and get the school board to adhere to the Texas Open Records Act, to stand up for our First Amendment, and to really allow folks um, in Godly ISD to speak their mind and to get the information that they have a legal right to obtain?
Well, here's the unfortunate thing about what has transpired in this last year. Previously, board policy allowed if a board trustee wanted an agenda item, they were concerned about something, wanted to discuss it, they could request that an agenda item be put on for the next meeting. They, with one of our new board trustees, the newest, Kayla Lane, the very day that she was elected, they changed the policy so that 3 board trustees have to agree and request to have an agenda item added. That's outside of how any board should run. I recently spoke with someone in my community. They're on a board of a large corporation industry in this area. And they said, even as a board member of a company, I can request an item be put on the agenda. So if I, as a board member, am going to serve my community, then my community should be able to come to me and say, hey, this is what's going on in this school system. And then if I feel like it is necessary for that to be a discussion, an open and honest, transparent discussion, I should be able to go to the other board trustees, submit mine and say, this is something that I want to discuss, because that's representative. That's representative government. That's what we're supposed to be doing here, is representative government. So in taking that away, then that's trampling on that right to petition our government for redress of grievances. It's essentially removing that. So at this time, with that policy in place, we would need at least 2 more members or trustees to be elected who have the same idea about transparency and protecting, free speech, and really being a representative board in Godly.
And that's just to get something on the agenda.
On the agenda, yes.
How much would it take to get something passed?
Well, then you're going to have a majority. So, we would have to have 4 people who would say, you know what, we all agree that we need to change a policy, add a policy, adjust a policy. So, yeah, we need to get some people who are understanding and believe in the rights that are afforded us by the Constitution, our United States Constitution and the Texas Constitution. They agree on these rights.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another big thing that's impacting school districts across the state of Texas, including in Godly, is this wave of massive bonds that have been proposed for massive infrastructure projects for these schools. I believe it was last year, Godly ISD, the voters within the school district voted down a bond that at face value was almost $900 million. After it gets paid off, that bond would have cost the taxpayers $1.7 billion. And this comes from a school district with, 2,600 children.
Correct.
the bonds are back out in Godley. They're back in other communities around Texas. What is going on with the bond this time around? How much is it? What's it for? And then we'll talk about how it impacts this election.
Okay. Well, the proposal and what the board called this year is for $365 million. That covers allegedly a 3-year, that's a 3-year bond. And it includes a new elementary school, a very expensive elementary school. It is supposed to include updates, very necessary and needed updates that have been postponed to legacy schools that are in need of repair. And so the bond isn't, the problem that we have here is not necessarily that we need things to be done. We all understand that at some point facilities need to be built, if we're going to have growth. We understand that money needs to be spent, for necessary upgrades at, older buildings like Legacy. Those are important things. The problem is the way money is being spent. We have expenditures. An $88 million grade school is not necessary. And so what we're trying to communicate to this community is we're not saying that we want kids sitting out in the field, with no roof over their head. What we're saying is we need to be much wiser, much more frugal. And we need to stop using our money for marketing. That's, paying. I always say, you wouldn't invite a car salesman to your house and then pay the car salesman to sell you the deal. And that's essentially what Godley has done. They have paid Huckabee, this architect firm. What we've discovered thus far with the only records that we have been able to get them to share is last year, $66,000 just for them to come sell their product. So that's the problem here, is how we're spending the money. Not that we spend money, but how we spend the money.
Now, this bond is coming up in the middle of a school board election. Obviously, it has been one of the key factors in the election so far. Your election day is May 4th of this year. We've got, when this podcast comes out, about 2.5 weeks between when this podcast comes out and election day. What are you hearing on the ground from the school, from people working in the school about this bond and how it's going to impact how folks vote on the next set of school board trustees?
It feels very polarized in the community. Now, when I've been out talking to people door to door, talking to people one-on-one, everybody's concerned about their own bottom lines. The people that I speak to have said they're very concerned about the way this district is spending money, the mismanagement of funds, these type of expenditures. When we talk to people about how they spent $66,000, or, just the 2 invoice information that we could get from last year, Huckabee and Mays Media, which is the same media company that helped market the Arlington Bond Rangers. It's the same company. And just those 2 alone was $115,000. What could you do with $115,000? People, they don't, and again, that goes back to transparency, right? People aren't understanding these things until we sit down and talk to them and say, hey, these are the type of expenditures, and people are asking, where's the money going? They're finally asking. When we see a brand new basketball arena, we see a humongous stadium that has, special, they're not just plain seats, they're, extra special color seats. People are saying, I'm not sure that I like this idea at all. And I'm very concerned. And so people are saying, if you, Nova, and the other two candidates were kind of running on the same platform. If you guys are all for fiscal responsibility and transparency and turning around the finances of this, for this community and fighting for the taxpayers here, then that's the kind of people they want to elect. Because it's not just for this year. There's going to be, more opportunity to spend more money. And if we don't get people in to these seats who are going to push back and who are going to say, hold on, Huckabee, what you're selling us, I'm not sure that's the best decision to be made. And so doing things like, I haven't seen any other proposals, any other companies, any other bids. That was one of my questions even last year. It's fine. I thought that was very weird, sort of getting in, to this process. Like, where's all the other bids? Where's the other companies? Where's the competition? And, to see that. And so I think that those are the questions that other people have as well. And those answers aren't being provided by the school district. So,
Well, in the last few minutes that we have here together, what else are you seeing going on in Godley, which is experiencing explosive growth over the last few years? And a lot of that growth is used as justification for these enormous bonds. Uh, are there growing pains in Godley? What do those look like? And how do those manifest themselves in the school system?
well, yes. I mean, nobody can sit and lie that Godly isn't growing. It is. I think the question is how fast truly are we growing? And I think that we have to be very concerned right now with the way that our economy is, our housing market. We have to look at things conservatively. I think that we do need to plan to change things. No one, myself included, I don't think would support just adding more kids, and overburdening teachers who are already overburdened. So I think that class sizes have increased. I think that we need to look at those, but I think that sometimes fear is really used as a tool, and to say that we're going to have X number, and I don't see the realization of that to that extent happening. So those questions need to be constantly looked at, but I don't think that we need to plan for the absolute most, the grandest, the biggest growth. I think we need to be very wise and very conservative and make good decisions that are on the more conservative side for everybody involved.
Nova, you are very right about that. We know that your election is coming up May the 4th. Early voting is going to be April 22nd through April 30th.
Yeah.
What do you need in order to succeed, and how can folks learn more about you?
So we have got to get people out to vote. Over the next few weeks, I'll continue to put information out there about how people in our ISD can vote. I've already put some posts out on our neighborhood or on the community pages, just explaining, because one thing we have to understand, we have two sets of people in this ISD. We have people who are also city limits. So they vote a little bit differently than the folks who are outside of the city limits. City limits are going to vote city one place, ISD another place in early voting. On May the 4th, it's going to be at the park. So that'll be easy, but there may be a long line. So we always encourage people to get out and early vote. So I'll be putting those, that information out several times so people are really informed about where they go and what the times are that they can go vote. Get out and vote. If you have a desire to change this community, you know, if you want fiscal responsibility and transparency, and to really improve and manage this community the way it should in the years to come, please get out and vote for school board. School board and city elections are the places that you can have the most impact, the absolute most impact to your bottom line when you vote. Also, I have a page, the Nova OLSON for Godley ISD. You can find me on Facebook. I post things often on the community pages so that people can continually see. And please, anyone who has any questions, I'm willing to have a conversation with you by phone, by email, through Messenger. I'm happy to meet with you in person so you can hear, ask questions about what I think should be done, what I believe, what I'm concerned about. I am an open door. I recently put out a post for the community to teachers saying, you know, you guys are the ones on the front lines. You're the one doing it, you know, day after day, using these facilities, trying to do the best job you can. I want to hear from you. So even if you don't like me, I'm happy to be, you know, hear your criticism. If you want to sit down and say, I'm not sure I agree with you. I mean, I think we've lost the ability so much, you know, to have really good conversation, you know, in our culture, you know, with people. Sometimes you have to listen, you have to practice to listen to understand others. And I'm willing to listen to understand, not just to say, not just to speak. So.
Well, Nova, that's a very honorable position to have. And I wish that there were more people out there who had that same heart. So Nova, thank you very much for running. Best of luck to you in your race. And for those listening, we'll put everything down in the comments, in the show notes, the descriptions, whatever. Best of luck to you. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, best of luck to Nova and all of the great candidates across the state of Texas who are running for school boards right now. Those are very, very important positions because it is their job to hold on to our tax dollars and be good stewards of those tax dollars. School districts in the state of Texas are actually the largest taxing entities. You and I might not know it yet, but those folks who go and they represent us on the school board, whether you have a kid or not, those folks are determining our tax rates. That's the biggest chunk of our property taxes in the state of Texas. And I believe it's similar in many other places around the country. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you disagree with me on any of this, if you disagree with Nova, put it down in the comments. Feed the algorithm. We love that. But when we send people off to these school boards, we really should be asking them for two things. One, to be good stewards of our tax dollars, and in my opinion, reducing our taxes. They should be trying to keep our taxes as low as possible, if not outright eliminate property taxes. And that might not be the job for the school board. That's a different conversation that doubtless we're going to have some other guests on about who are running for state legislature. But the other thing is to provide some transparency. Tell us what is going on in the school districts so that we can make informed decisions about whether to send our kids there, whether to enroll our kids in extracurricular activities there, whether we even want to purchase a home in that school district or not, who to send back to the school district. Because these school districts are taking the the lion's share of our taxes, lion's share of our property taxes. We have a right to know what they're doing with our tax dollars, and we also have a right to go in front of them and say, hey, we don't agree with the way that you're spending our money. We would rather it be spent this way, or we'd rather you just tax us less so we can spend our own money. So, go out, educate yourself, whether you're in Godley ISD or in any other school district across the country. Educate yourself on who's running. If there's a bond proposition or any other ballot proposals in your area, make sure you make an informed vote, because decisions are made by those who show up. And if you don't show up, then other people are making those decisions for you. That's a scary proposition. There's a lot of people that I know that I do not want making decisions for my life. There's a lot of people that I know that I don't want making the decision about how much money I have to pay to the government. There's a lot of people around me that I don't want to have the decision about the way that I should be running my business. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in your life that come to mind when I bring that up. Don't let them make the decision for you. Go out, exercise your right to vote, and make that decision for yourself. That's what's going on behind the scenes. As always, interact with us on our social media. You can find all of our episodes online at AmericanLibertyMedia.com or on our YouTube channel where you're probably watching this. We also have our Spotify channel up, as well as Rumble, and some other great conversations coming up ahead, as well as, and I believe this week is when we launch a couple of our other shows. So make sure to check out Unhinged with Sean Goins. If you're watching this, when this comes out, that'll be out tomorrow. Check it out. My name is Matthew Lucci. This is The Truth. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.